Bringing time to think into an organization is powerful work, but it's not always easy. We're introducing a way of being that runs counter to many of today's workplace habits: speed, interruption, hierarchy, and the constant demand for immediate answers. This section explores the deployment challenges that often arise when trying to embed time to think into real organizational life, from cultural resistance and leadership skepticism to the pressures of pace and productivity. By understanding these challenges, we can anticipate them, navigate them with grace, and stay true to the purpose behind this work: creating environments where people can think clearly, independently, and humanely, even in the middle of a busy corporate world.
A thinking environment is natural, but rare. It has been squeezed out of our lives and organizations by inferior ways of treating each other. Politics and power dynamics. In most organizations, politics and power dynamics are a daily reality. People quickly learn that conversations are not neutral. They're shaped by hierarchy, positional authority, and office politics. When the focus is on protecting status or aligning with the right people, there's less safety for open and honest thinking. Individuals may choose their words carefully, avoid saying what they really mean, or position themselves strategically rather than offering fresh, unfiltered ideas. The result is a culture that values control more than curiosity, making it extremely difficult to sustain an environment where deep thinking can flourish. Habits of overtalking and interruption. A second barrier is the habit of overtalking and interruption. Many workplace cultures mistakenly equate contribution with how much someone speaks. Those who talk the loudest or the fastest are often perceived as the most valuable. This fosters constant interruptions, where individuals are preparing their next point rather than listening attentively. When this becomes the norm, real listening vanishes, and people lose the confidence to follow a thought all the way through. Instead of expanding on an idea, discussions fragment and stay superficial. A thinking environment requires the opposite: sustained attention, uninterrupted space, and respect for each person's voice. Ego and fear present another obstacle. In competitive organizations, people often feel their credibility or identity is on the line in every conversation. This drives a need to be right, which narrows curiosity and openness. At the same time, fear of looking foolish, of being ignored, or of challenging authority causes many to withhold their real thinking. They share only what feels safe and acceptable. The irony is that the most innovative, disruptive, and transformative thoughts are the ones most likely to be suppressed. Without reducing ego and fear, organizations struggle to create the psychological safety that a true thinking environment depends on.
Information overload. The modern information landscape compounds the problem. Social media, rolling news cycles, and endless notifications train us to react rather than reflect. Quick takes, headlines, and surface-level arguments often replace slow, careful thought. This spills into organizational life. People walk into meetings with opinions already shaped by external noise, leaving little space for genuine reflection or independent reasoning. In effect, we outsource our thinking to the information streams around us, rather than pausing to generate original insight. A thinking environment asks us to resist that pull, but in practice, this is incredibly difficult. Resulting challenge. All of these forces combine to make the creation of a thinking environment deeply challenging. When politics, over-talking, ego, fear, and information overload dominate, people are discouraged from thinking at their best. They withhold insights, avoid risks, and default to safe contributions. The organization loses access to the creativity and wisdom that its people actually hold. A thinking environment is therefore not just a nice to have. It is a radical alternative to the way organizations normally operate. Unlocking it requires conscious practice, courage, and discipline. Model genuine listening. In a corporate culture built on speed and constant output, genuine listening is almost a radical act. Most people listen in order to respond, not to understand. They mentally rehearse their reply while the other person is still speaking.
When leaders fall into this pattern, they send a powerful signal that airtime is earned through persuasion, not presence. To model genuine listening means to give someone your complete attention, not partial, not performative. It means stilling your own internal commentary, suspending the impulse to fix, advise, or evaluate. When a leader listens this way, the thinker feels seen and trusted. The quality of their thinking instantly rises. New ideas surface because the space feels safe enough to explore them. Genuine listening also builds cultural permission. When people observe a senior leader leaning forward, maintaining eye contact, and waiting calmly through a pause, they learn that silence is not a void to fill, but a space where thinking happens. Over time, meetings shift from being competitive dialogues to collective explorations. The organization begins to realize that listening is not time wasted. It is the precondition for innovation and insight. Protect equal speaking time. In most organizations, airtime is power. Meetings tend to be dominated by the same confident voices, while others recede into silence. Protecting equal speaking time restores balance and signals that every viewpoint matters. This is not about forcing artificial equality. It's about ensuring that the flow of dialogue is not distorted by hierarchy, personality, or speed of speech. Leaders can do this practically by setting clear norms. Everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice. Contributions are invited in a circle. Interruptions are paused. These structures initially feel slow, but they cultivate fairness, patience, and inclusion. The unexpected benefit is efficiency, because when everyone contributes in turn, the team hears the full range of intelligence the group possesses, reducing the need for rediscussion later. Equal airtime also develops confidence. When quieter people realize they will not be talked over, they begin to bring deeper, more thoughtful perspectives. The collective IQ of the team rises. The best leaders protect this balance fiercely, understanding that a meeting where 10% of the group speaks 90% of the time cannot possibly reflect the organization's full potential for thinking.
Reduce fear, grow safety. Fear is the enemy of independent thought. It narrows focus, suppresses originality, and drives people toward what feels safe or acceptable. In many organizations, fear is subtle, not overt intimidation, but the quiet anxiety of judgment, blame, or career risk. A thinking environment cannot survive under such conditions. Leaders can begin dismantling fear by consistently modeling psychological safety. They can thank people for dissenting, reward those who surface problems early, and respond to mistakes with curiosity instead of criticism. When people see that honesty is met with respect rather than retribution, their nervous systems relax. The energy once spent on self-protection is released into creativity and problem-solving. Safety also grows through transparency. When leaders share the why behind decisions and invite feedback before conclusions are final, they signal that thought is valued at every level. Over time, the organization learns that truth is welcome, even when it's uncomfortable. That shift, from compliance to courage, is what allows genuine thinking to flourish.
Slow down information flow. Modern corporations often drown in information. Dashboards, messages, meetings, reports, all compete for mental bandwidth. The pace gives the illusion of productivity, but actually fragments attention. Slowing down the flow of information is therefore not a sign of weakness. It is an act of discipline and design. Leaders can start by creating deliberate pauses in the rhythm of work. Schedule fewer, deeper meetings. Replace weekly status briefings with monthly reflective sessions.
Encourage people to think before they communicate, and to communicate only what advances collective understanding. In practice, this means valuing synthesis over volume and clarity over speed. When the flow slows, people begin to breathe again. They can hold ideas long enough for them to connect, challenge, and evolve. Insight takes time, so does wisdom. A thinking environment needs space between inputs for thought to mature. By consciously reducing noise, leaders create the conditions where signal can finally emerge. Reward quality of thought, not volume. In many organizations, visibility and confidence are mistaken for competence. The loudest voices and the quickest responses are often celebrated, while the deepest thinkers are overlooked. To sustain a thinking environment, leaders must invert this equation, rewarding the quality of thought rather than the quantity of words. This begins with redefining what good looks like. Instead of praising those who dominate discussion, acknowledge those who ask clarifying questions, synthesize perspectives, or bring insight that changes the group's understanding. Highlight examples of thoughtful analysis in performance reviews. Make thinking itself a valued contribution. When quality becomes the measure, behavior changes. People slow down before speaking. They listen for substance. They seek clarity rather than airtime. The culture evolves from performative busyness to reflective excellence. Over time, teams learn that thinking deeply before acting quickly is not a luxury. It is the foundation of every meaningful achievement. Speed culture versus ease. A common challenge often faced when bringing time to think into an organization is what we call speed culture, the obsession with moving fast. In most workplaces, speed is equated with productivity. The faster we respond, the more competent we appear. But the problem is that speed often replaces depth. It leaves no time for reflection or genuine thinking. Decisions are made quickly, but not always wisely. Time to think invites a different rhythm, one rooted in ease rather than urgency. Leaders can model this by pausing before responding, allowing silence to settle, and showing that calm isn't complacency, it's clarity. Even short pauses in meetings can change the tone completely. Instead of racing toward action, teams begin to think, connect, and prioritize what truly matters. Remember, ease doesn't slow us down. It allows better thinking to flow, which ultimately makes everything else faster and more effective.
One of the most universal challenges is the habit of interruption. Many organizations confuse talking quickly with being effective. We interrupt each other, finish sentences, and compete for airtime, often believing we're helping. But what interruption really communicates is, your thinking doesn't matter as much as mine. Over time, that habit shuts people down. It fragments attention and weakens the quality of collective thought. Time to Think rebuilds this discipline by reinstating the art of listening. Structures like rounds and thinking pairs retrain teams to stay silent and attentive while others speak. The listener's role is not to agree or respond, it's to create space where the other person can think more clearly for themselves. When people experience that kind of listening, something remarkable happens. They begin to listen that way to others. In time, interruption disappears, not because it's banned, but because it simply feels unnecessary.
Hierarchy and dominant voices. In most organizations, seniority shapes who gets heard. Leaders speak first, others edit their views, and important insights are lost in silence. Time to Think challenges this directly by reinstating equality as a condition for great thinking. In rounds or councils, everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice, regardless of title or position. This simple structure creates a profound cultural shift. When people know they will have equal airtime, they stop competing for it. When senior leaders model humility by speaking last and asking questions rather than giving answers, the hierarchy relaxes and wisdom starts to surface from everywhere. Equality doesn't mean sameness. It means every mind matters equally in the act of thinking. And when organizations embody that, they don't just get more voices, they get better decisions.
Scepticism, or simple misunderstanding about what time to think really is a complex challenge to overcome. At first glance, people sometimes see it as soft, slow, or even impractical. They might say, "We don't have time for this," or "That won't work in our fast-paced environment." But this skepticism often comes from not yet experiencing the impact. The best response isn't to argue, it's to demonstrate. When people see that meetings run faster, that ideas emerge more clearly, and that relationships strengthen through genuine attention, they begin to understand that time to think isn't a luxury, it's an efficiency. Share results, tell stories, and show the ripple effects, how clarity and trust directly improve performance. Over time, skepticism fades because people see that this isn't about slowing down the business, it's about removing the noise that blocks it from thinking.
Overload and fatigue. So many teams are stretched thin. Back-to-back meetings, constant notifications, and little space for pause. People feel they have no time to think, and that exhaustion becomes a self-perpetuating constraint. In this environment, even the idea of taking time to think can feel unrealistic. That's why the key here is start small. Introduce what Nancy Kline calls micro moments of attention. Begin meetings with 1 minute of silence. End them with a brief reflection or appreciation round. These small changes require no extra time. They simply use time differently. The cumulative effect is powerful. People start feeling calmer, sharper, and more present. When the system begins to breathe again, energy returns, and thinking quality naturally rises. Fatigue doesn't come from hard work. It comes from unconsidered work. Time to think restores consideration. In addition, this is why we strongly recommend that Dave Allen's Getting Things Done is used by everyone to get things out of people's heads and into their own trusted system of record to free up mental bandwidth. Loss of momentum after launch. Many organizations begin with enthusiasm. They run the training, host the sessions, maybe even declare a new thinking culture. But over time, daily pressures take over. The practice fades, not out of resistance, but simply from lack of rhythm. The solution isn't more intensity, it's more consistency. Build time to think into the fabric of work by creating a regular cadence. Weekly thinking pairs for individual clarity. Monthly councils for shared reflection and collective insight. Quarterly reflection rounds to harvest learning and celebrate progress. These small but regular rituals turn awareness into habit. They remind people that thinking isn't an event, it's an ongoing practice. Over time, momentum doesn't need to be reignited because it never disappears. It's built into the way people meet, talk, and lead every day. So, this brings us to the end of this section in which we discussed many of the challenges that you may face when looking to embed time to think in an organization, along with guidance around how you could potentially overcome them. We hope you enjoyed this section and look forward to seeing you on the next one.